Hi there, welcome to Inside the Third Circle. We're going to be talking a little bit about this quote from Mikel Arteta. This tweet is 8th of January. It's been going around. One of the sound bites from Arteta's conversation with Jorge Valdano. Full interview is available on YouTube, I believe. This is a tweet from Thomas Somoza, who's a journalist by the looks of things, and the translation is Mikel Arteta and the future of football. The quote, "The macro structure, how we pass it and where we position ourselves no longer has any impact. It's who is capable of making an action that defines a match, the boldness, the inspiration, that everything be much more fluid, generate chaos." So the first thing that strikes me about that is it's a little counterintuitive coming from Arteta. I suppose I find myself talking about Arteta a fair amount these days. Why is that? I think he's an interesting figure to analyse football through in this moment. I think it's broadly accepted now we're coming to the end of what might be thought about as a Guardiolan epoch era paradigm of football. You can check out the Third Circle podcast for discussions about that. And so, when we come to the end of this very hyper-controlling, finding the free man, forcing the opponent back, patient possession style of football, it's kind of been negated by changes in defensive systems, man-to-man marking, physical approaches, different types of pressing schemes. So we find ourselves in a situation where top teams are tasked with finding different ways of breaking teams down, and that's where we are, right? And what's going to be the prevailing method of doing that? We don't really know, but Arteta is certainly a prominent figure at this point with his solution, right, of maintaining a lot of those positional principles in building up and controlling the ball and circulating the ball, but not really attacking through the centre so much with combination play. Again, it's well documented. Maybe that'll change with Havertz coming back a little bit. But generally speaking, I think it's fairly obvious that they attack down the sides. They look for 1v1 duels. They look to generate set pieces, throw-ins, corners, free kicks from these wide attacks. And, whatever, that's fine. That's the... It's working for Arteta, it's working for Arsenal, it's absolutely no problem. They're doing very well. But in terms of this comment, I found it to be a little bit dissonant, right, between what Arteta is saying and the actual reality of what happens on the pitch when we watch an Arteta Arsenal team play. Now, to be fair, it could be a little bit semantics. There's a translation aspect here. So when Arteta is saying the macro structure no longer has any impact, I guess he's maybe talking about like having one fixed structure in a game, like a 3-2-5 or whatever it might be, and it's always changing and it's always in flux. And, fair enough. Arsenal, of course, and like the vast majority of positional teams are changing those structures during the game. They will vary. But I would argue that it's pretty clear that in all phases of the game, Arteta wants some kind of positional macro structure, right? And they vary, sure, but I don't really see the correlation between these comments and what happens in the match. So yeah, I think there's probably another point here about when managers speak, especially ones who are successful at a certain moment. The comments get passed around, they get shared around. Wow, this is like visionary, this is a prophetic analysis of the future trajectories of the beautiful game, right? All this kind of thing. And I think a little bit of critique is missing. And like I say, it's nothing about necessarily the effectiveness, although we can talk about that, like the effectiveness of the way Arteta plays football. That's a very interesting debate that's also happening now. I think there's different camps and different perspectives on that. But I'm more interested here in this in this discussion about the correlation between Arteta's comments and how people have reacted to those and what is actually happening on the pitch, right? And what does that say to us a little bit about how we interpret the comments of coaches, right, in the media? Why Arteta would think these things and say these things, that's also interesting to consider. I agree generally that macro structures, I don't know how we pass it's a little bit difficult to parse, but where we position ourselves, if we're talking about that in terms of like predefined positional structures, etc. Of course, I've done a lot of work on this and a lot of writing and a lot of analysis on the potential limitations of adhering too much to macro structures and certain types of positional interpretations. So yeah, I think I would agree, generally speaking, that dissolving some of those structures and using other types of principles to orient players to orient themselves in the game is what will happen in the future. But yeah, and maybe it is Arteta just projecting further into the future than now. But I thought it would be interesting just to take those comments, to bear this comment in mind from Arteta about the macro structure, how we pass it and where we position ourselves no longer has any impact. So let's bear that in mind. And then rather than just taking that face value, swallowing it whole, right, we can actually now take a look at some footage, some clips, and see how these comments actually track on to the reality of the game. Okay, so let's take a little look at some footage, bearing in mind Arteta's comments. This is from the recent Liverpool Premier League fixture, early in the second half. Zubamendi on the ball, dropping in. He's got Gabriel to his left. He's got Saliba to his right. Timber to right back. Nkapie left back. Rice and Odegaard middle. Saka high right. Gyökeres 9. Trossard high left. And keep an eye on Odegaard here. Odegaard turns to Timber, and with his right arm, you can see it, his right hand, he gesticulates, waves Timber forward. So Timber starts jogging forward into that right half space. This is where he was occupying a lot also in the first half, so throughout the game. And we know that classical positional play and a lot of Arteta's principles are based around having the 5 channels occupied on that first line. It can be to overload a back four. In this situation where Liverpool's wide players are following man-to-man, it pins them back, creates a little bit more space theoretically so they can build the game in front. But anyway, there goes Timber under Odegaard's instruction. Odegaard then turns to the other side. There goes the hand. He's pointing at Nkapie this time, and Nkapie is like, oh, God, really? Me? You know, you got to go up there. You got to go and fill that corridor. You got to fill the space, drag Frimpong with you in this situation. And, you know, that's what's happening there. And it's very difficult to, you know, interpret that in any other way than that is a pre-designed, pre-planned structural choice that Arteta has made and is implementing here through Odegaard on the pitch. Like, that is what's happening. And there are reasons for it. Again, like, you can talk about the reasons for it, but again, that's not really the at the forefront here of this discussion. This is more in relation to the comments that Arteta made about macro structures, where we position ourselves not having an impact. Well, if that's the case, then what is this? Like, and this is happening all the time. Okay, not like 100% time of the match, but a lot during the match and all matches, and not just Arteta, many coaches. These things are happening like all the time, which is fine. Like, there are advantages to it. There are trade-offs. There are also disadvantages. But I think it's just, you know, let's just be clear about what is happening. I think it's more useful to just say what it, you know, what is happening in reality than obfuscate things and say the opposite when it seems not to be the case. And what actually happens here, and again, like the reason for these positional macro structural tweaks is to gain advantages, and there are advantages that can be gained. But in this situation, Arsenal are so busy doing that they actually forget to play. I mean, Zubamendi is looking for a passing option. There isn't one forward, although Gyökeres could drop, Timber could drop, Saka could drop in there, Odegaard could show. Like, anything can happen. It's football. But they don't. They're quite busy or preoccupied. Their attentions are primed and attuned to doing this structural stuff. And what happens is it goes to Saliba eventually, because Zubamendi's pressed. He can't just walk forward forever. He's pressed and he passes to Saliba, and there's no options. There are no advantages gained in this situation by what just happened, right? The idea is to gain advantages through macro structure, right? That's why the positional game works. But in this situation, no advantages are gained by those positional movements. The construction of that macro structure has not gained an advantage because the play breaks. I mean, you could play it to Saka maybe if he's quick, but it's not a great situation for Saka to receive it. That could be one option. He does try it, but it's too late. So, like, Odegaard has essentially forgotten to play football because he was playing chess. Like, he was literally moving pieces on the board there, and the ball's moving, play's happening, but he's nowhere near to be in the ball zone or an option for the receiver. And look, like, Arsenal are also very good, and they have many, many good moments in games. But it's just important, I think, to also be clear about what is happening in these games, especially in relation to some of those comments. This time, Rice drops in, still a minute or so later. And, there are many clips from this game that just show this similar type of thing. And there goes Hincapié, there goes Timber. There they go, moving into those half spaces, wide players following them. And this time they go for, Rice just launches one, right? So there's the 5 on the top, runners on the front line, big kick to the wide area, the wide zone, I guess hope for control, get a little bit of a duel, or maybe win a set piece or pin them back for Liverpool's throw in, something like that. But again, without even discussion about the potential advantages or disadvantages or trade-offs of doing this, it is happening. Like that is happening. That is what is going on in reality on the pitch. And that doesn't necessarily track with the comment about macro structures and where we position ourselves not having an impact. Because if they don't have an impact, then why do them? So, yeah, my position would just be, it's totally fine to do them, and fine to gain huge advantage from them. So I don't see the point of saying that it's not happening when it clearly is. But these debates will rumble on. Let us know what you think, and we'll be back soon with some more updates and information about the third circle. Interesting things are happening.